Welcome, welcome, welcome to this edition of Sagionic 1027. We are so glad that you decided to join us today. And with us, I have a guest. I think I met her back in like 2015 is my
Yeah.
guesstimate, right about
Yeah.
2014, 15 in there. And I just fell in love with her right away. I got to have her as a guest in my home at one time. But although we didn't communicate, I never let go of her. And every now and then, she would be placed in my mind. I'd pray over her and her husband and her family. And it's just been beautiful to watch how Becky Zingale has continued to advance in the position, in the geographical environment, in the relational situations, in the biological situations that she has specifically been placed in. And so, Becky, I am so honored that you chose to be with us today. And
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
I'm very excited for people to get a glimpse into what does Becky Zingale's life look like. What is the makeup of her geographical, relational, family lineage? What is it like living in your world? So, can you take our viewers a little bit into your world and how your world is a purposeful, unique, peculiar, magnificent world?
That's a high expectations there. My world is amazing. Well, I was thinking when I met you, I was pregnant with my daughter Ariasha, and then when we stayed at your house was when we were going to Portland because we were planning on having a home birth, and then we had a concerning ultrasound, and they wanted our daughter to be born in Portland, so we stayed at your house and we went to a doctor's appointment there because that was 5 hours from where we lived. So yeah, that is when we met.
Yeah.
Interesting. Which is kind of where, like, I'd say it's where this story begins, I guess, of where I'm at now is with my younger daughter.
So
So my,
before you got pregnant, share how you were set in a different setting. And yet, if we think of a jewelry piece, right? When a jeweler makes a setting that's one of a kind that's unique, also the stone is unique for that setting. So you were positioned in a setting in life before you got pregnant. Share with our
yeah,
viewers a little bit about your world.
yeah. So, well, my husband and I worked for a nonprofit organization training leaders in ministry. YWAM, if you've heard of Youth with a Mission. So yeah, and we had met through that program, and something that really attracted me to Duane was his confidence. And the really interesting thing about him is that he has facial differences. He's missing a bit of cheekbones and he has prosthetic ears. So, like, if he puts a kid on his shoulders, his ears fall off and his glasses fall off and his hearing aid falls off because he doesn't hear through his plastic ears. He hears through a hearing aid that's implanted on in his skull. Um, he has like a little magnet screw that the hearing aid snaps onto. Um, so yeah, I was really just, I was falling in love with him, but also kind of the question of like, well, how would I feel about marrying someone who looks different and not only looks different, but actually likes to draw attention to himself? Because I prefer like not to be in the spotlight and not to be on people's podcasts. This is his world, not mine. Um, yeah. But I realized like I really admire his confidence and it felt like he had every reason to want to hide and not be noticed. And I'm like, why am I hiding? Like I should not be so insecure. Um, yeah, so it's like, well, I guess like everything that he went through growing up with facial differences, I think is part of what made him who he is. So made him the person that I love. So we got married and we had two kids. And our so he has Treacher-Collins syndrome. I think I said that, which affects the development of facial bones. And then his was a spontaneous genetic mutation, but it is because he has it. It's genetic then and can be
Okay.
passed on to our children. So our older daughter was not affected, but our younger daughter, they could see in the ultrasound that she had like little like dark spots where her cheekbones aren't fully developed and she had a small lower jaw. So worst case scenario, as we discovered, like we were okay with having kids because Duane turned out amazing and our kids are like him. That's fine. That's great. But we didn't realize the severity of Treacher-Collins syndrome. And because, I mean, Duane's he doesn't have cheekbones. He has a hearing aid. Like, it's not life threatening or anything super serious. But the worst case scenario is just having the small lower jaw that affects the airway, and babies like not being able to breathe and needing a surgery right away to put a tracheotomy in to be able to breathe so they can live. So that is why we did not have a home birth, because of that risk. But
And when, okay, let's break it down for viewers a little more, okay? So although you've got facial differences, right?
mm-hmm.
The facial differences do not uh, hinder the intellectual, because
Right.
your husband is like crazy smart,
Yeah.
right? And so during the process of, at what point in your pregnancy was this discovered? And then were you encouraged to do anything throughout this time because of how your baby was going to turn out?
Yeah, I think so. It was the 20-week ultrasound, like
Okay.
gender reveal. To me, I'm like, this is just a gender reveal ultrasound. That's the whole point
Yeah.
of this.
Yeah.
Apparently, it's more important than that. Um, and I think sometimes people are like, like, well, do you want to keep the baby? Which I guess I don't know what the rules are even on abortion and stuff,
Yeah.
but there's that element. Which so we never really experienced that because Duane has the syndrome, so people didn't really try to convince us of like she's gonna have a terrible quality of life or
Yeah.
whatever, because we're like he's like tell me about it. Like, we're educating the doctors along the way.
Yeah.
It was weird though, because we had a midwife, and then because of the concerning ultrasound, our insurance wanted us to go to Portland, and so I didn't have any like medical care in Bend anymore. And we went to Portland to that one appointment, and then it's like I didn't have another doctor's appointment for like a month. It was like I almost like there's a breakdown, because I'm like, I'm not going to go to Portland every week, because at some point towards the end of pregnancy you go weekly to these appointments. It's like there's this funny gap that happened where I'm like, I feel like I just got I just got labeled high risk and then abandoned by the medical system. Like, okay, this is weird. And then my first labor was 12 hours. I think my water broke at midnight and Chloe was born at noon. And the second time can be faster, so it's like, so I'm going to go into labor and then we're going to drive 5 hours. Okay. This will be interesting.
Yeah.
The other interesting
And
thing,
especially because it was your second baby. So we know that as moms who have given birth to children, it literally it's like it's like you've been trained that your life revolves around the doctor's appointments, and then they go a certain pattern. We've been trained. The doctors have trained us that this is the sequence and what happens when a woman's pregnant. Right? And now you're like, wait a minute. And it also becomes a source of security, right? Oh, so the doctor says everything's okay, right?
Yeah.
And so now take us back to those moments of, wait a minute, where did all these things go that are normally here?
Yeah. So an interesting thing, we invented our daughter's name, Aryasha, because I liked the name Arya and I liked the name Asha. Asha is Hindi for hope, or I think in Swahili it means life. And then Arya means breath or melody. So her name literally means breath of life or melody of hope. So we had our gender reveal party, announced her name to all of our friends. And then somehow when we had the ultrasound, like, they gave us pictures. And I'm like, how come they don't have any, like, they took a ton of pictures. Like, it was a lot. And I'm like, why aren't there any, like, good pictures of her face? If that makes sense. And then we got a call a couple days later from a doctor who was, like, concerned about Treacher-Collins syndrome. And as soon as he said that, I was like, oh, that's why there's these, like, I don't know why I didn't see that, except that we had already been there, done that, had a kid, and everything was fine. So we were just like, it's going to do the exact same thing again. Everything's going to be fine. And I'm actually really thankful that our first pregnancy went so well and everything was really good, because I was able to have that, like, I had a natural birth, the first kid. Like, I was much more confident in spite of the medical concerns. But yeah, it was definitely weird to feel a little bit abandoned by the medical system. At the same time, we're like, her name literally means breath of life. And the worst case scenario is that they're concerned she might not be able to breathe. And I'm like, that doesn't line up.
Because
be okay.
Yeah, because she's already been labeled by the great I am, who she is.
I had a word before we had either kids. that I felt it was about breaking off like generational things, and I felt like it was specifically in regards to Treacher-Collins syndrome. And I wrote in my journal like, we don't need to worry about our kids having Treacher-Collins syndrome, which I took it as our kids aren't going to have it, so I wasn't worried, you know. And so then this diagnosis, it felt a little bit like God broke his promise. Like, what happened there? And I had to go back in my
Ah.
journal and see, like, I literally wrote, I don't need to worry about my kids having Treacher-Collins syndrome. So I'm like, okay, I don't need to worry, but it's still a reality.
You know,
There still is worry. It's hard to not worry.
I think we need to pause there for a second, okay? Because even within this last week, I was having a conversation with someone, and they said one specific word. And when they said it, I thought, well, isn't that interesting? And it said, do not store up treasures for yourself, meaning solely for yourself. But it doesn't
But you could store
say
treasures
for
others.
others, right? So think of it. The Lord spoke something to you. You took him at his word. You planted that word on your heart. And yet the scenery wound up looking different than the words on paper.
Yeah.
So share some share some words of encouragement for our viewers who potentially are in like-minded situations.
Interesting. I guess one thing that comes to mind is when I was pregnant with her, I had a lot of dreams
Okay.
that would feel like a bad dream, like a tsunami. There it was almost all like ocean, tsunami, floods, things like that. And so there would be like this huge wave coming, and I would be running away from it or trying to climb up some, crazy side of a building or rock wall or whatever. And then it was like the wave didn't hit, kind of thing. And then I would wake up and hear the song, It's Your Love, wave after wave washing over me. And so it felt like I was getting, like, there were waves of fear coming. And then it was like, instead, like maybe God's love intervened. And so I'd wake up feeling really like peaceful and calm from what felt like it should be a bad dream, which is a really interesting dynamic. Um, yeah, along with the encouragement, like I feel like my daughter, I mean, she's the reason that I have the job that I have right now. Like she's given me purpose and meaning in a way to impact other people and help other families, which, like how God works all things together for good. It still feels unfortunate for her, if that makes sense. Like this is working out well for me, but I'm also not the one who has to wear a hearing aid and things like that. Like she's the one who has to struggle. But as we've been able to help her, my husband and I both, and our older daughter even, like we've also been able to help other families. I don't know if that really answered the question.
It
But
did. It did because it's like you basically said, like, okay, we could say whatever cards you've been dealt, right? Or whatever vineyard you've been placed in, wherever.
yeah.
Okay, because let's, truth be told, did someone come to me or you before you were born and say, could you please tell me what geographical location on planet Earth you'd like to be born in? And could you please tell me the kind of family you would like to be born into? Could you please tell me the financial status you would like to be raised around? Right?
We probably all picked the most easy, positive scenarios, right?
Exactly. And somehow none of us were given that option, were we? Right?
Yeah.
I wasn't given the option to the color of hair, the texture of hair, right? The tone of skin.
Yeah.
We're not given these options, right? And so basically whatever's been laid before you, right? How do you navigate through it? Right? And so if it looks like a benefit over here, what looked like maybe something difficult over here, I guarantee you that Duane's physical difference is what developed his determination.
Yeah.
It did.
He likes attention. He's a marketer and a podcaster and all these things. And so he goes out there and he's like, he takes his ears off and he's like, I can guarantee that you will never forget me. Yep. So yeah, he's definitely learned to use
Yeah.
it. To
Even
own
like
who he is, really, embrace who he is.
even like our brother Nick. right? Our brother Nick V, I'm going to call him,
Yeah.
right? Nick V. I can't say his last name. I'm going to interview him, by the way. Yeah, I'm going to interview
Nice.
Nick, okay?
Yeah, we'd like to interview him someday too.
Yeah, and so I'll get the interview and then you'll get the interview, okay? Or vice versa. Whoever gets the interview first, the next person gets the next interview,
Okay.
okay? Our verbiage went out into the Earth's atmosphere. Nick, come forward to Duane and Becky and Sean and Steve in Jesus' mighty name. Okay. Um,
Perfect.
so share with us. Okay. So now you find out your daughter is not going to have the normal fat cheeks that babies have.
Yes.
Okay. So then what happened?
So I like growing up, my older sister was in a wheelchair and stuff. So I'm familiar with the special needs world as a child, not as a parent. And then my husband also has Treacher Collins syndrome. So it's like we weren't like we can parent a child who looks like Dwayne. Like that'll be fine. I think the thing that really hit me was seeing my older daughter, because like you said, she didn't get to choose. Like we're okay with having a kid with Treacher Collins syndrome, and then it's like, oh surprise, like you get to be the big sister. And just having grown up myself as the sometimes overlooked, forgotten sibling, I'm like, oh man, like this is like it's a hard life for her as well, and
Yeah.
not something that she got to choose.
I'll just pause there for a second. I want you to look up a song later on. And her name was Reba, not Reba McEntire, Reba something.
Okay,
And she sang a song, Still I Will Trust You.
I think I've heard of it.
Okay. And I think it was her, or it was a choir song I was saying. We heard, one of the phrases is, "Still I will trust you. Still I will follow. Still I will listen to your every calling while the storm rages on and I can't find my way. Still I will trust you, Lord."
Nice.
So now you got your childhood gushing up inside of you.
Yep.
You've got this child inside of your womb. You're
Yep.
trying to love on your older daughter while you're impregnated with your younger daughter, and in the night watch, these what appears to be drowning waters are coming in around you. So
Yep.
how did you navigate? That's a lot of gushing.
There's a quote that says, "You never know how strong you are till being strong is the only choice you have." So just kind of held on to that. And then
Okay.
Frozen 2 obviously had not come out yet at that point. But when they talk about like just do the next right thing, like it felt like that's what, like, just take the next step. Take life one day at a time. Like, if you try to look at the big picture at that point, it's like this is way too much. Um, but just take the next step, take it one thing at a time.
That's
Somehow
right.
we did it. I mean, looking back, I'm like, oh goodness, I'm tired.
And even if we think of taking the next step, can you share with viewers on what you've always loved this quote? Share with
um,
viewers your favorite quote.
the "do not go where the path may lead, go instead where there is no path and leave a trail." I think we're all good at noticing things that are wrong and complaining about them. But I've had to learn to, like, okay, if I've noticed, instead of just complaining, like, what can I do to solve this problem? And then how can I help others and make it easier for the people who are coming after us? Which I think that's Duane's mindset as well. So even like everything we're going through, even as we're going through this, we're like, okay, well, how can we help others? Because this is really hard. How can we make this easier for the next family?
And
Yeah.
in the Christian world, there's a terminology that you and Duane are, and it's called an apostolic anointing.
Yeah.
Okay, because an apostolic and then in the other side of the world, not the other side of the world, in a different verbiage would be, I heard Craig Hill He's part of Family Foundation International, and actually interviewed him. In one of his classes I took, he shared, minister to those who will minister to others who will minister to,
Mm-hmm.
to millions.
Yeah.
Right? And so you and Duane are not about me, myself, and I, right?
Yeah.
You guys are about how do we, instead of just being sucked into this isolated space of doom and gloom, how do we take what we have, right? How do
Mm-hmm.
we cultivate a solution?
Mm-hmm.
And then how do we then market or broadcast that solution?
Yeah.
So can you take our viewers that direction?
Yeah. I think it helps, like, it helps when there's purpose in your pain, if that makes sense.
Yay!
Like, this isn't just pain for the sake of pain. It's like there will be purpose, and knowing that it will work together for good. We will find a way to make it work, or God will make it work. Hopefully, it's better if he does it than if I try to figure it out. So yeah. So one thing that happened was my daughter needed hearing aids, just like my husband has, and his is implanted in his skull bone, but children are not old enough to have a thick enough skull to have the surgery to implant it. So they wear a headband, and then it's a bone conductive hearing aid that just rests on the bone because she doesn't have an eardrum. She has ears, unlike her dada, she has ears, but she has no eardrum. And so instead of using the eardrum to conduct sound, like it vibrates and stuff, the hearing aid literally just rests on the skull bone and uses the skull bone to vibrate. Like if I set the hearing aid on the table, when you put the battery in and turn it on, it plays a little melody. And if I set it on the table, tight up against the table, it'll reverberate through the wood, which is really cool. It's a fun thing I like to do. And I'm
Wow.
like, and now I know it's turned on because it just played music on my table. Yeah, it's really fascinating technology.
Yeah.
Um, the hearing aid company gives you, well, the hearing aid company, insurance, all that stuff, gives you one headband, solid color, black, brown, blue, pink. There might have been a couple other boring options. I didn't like pink, but she's a girl, so I think I chose blue, which it basically is like hospital scrubs, blue, medical, elastic. I'm like, wow, this is kind of ugly and not very soft or comfortable either. So I went, I joined all the Facebook groups, which is the amazing thing about technology nowadays. Like you get any sort of diagnosis, just go find the Facebook group for it and talk to all the other people who have the same struggle. It's amazing. And so there's all these moms who just like, oh, we just make our own, headbands, and they explain, you can go look it up on YouTube and, go look on Etsy. Maybe there's someone selling something. And it's kind of like, we're in the middle of this new baby, hearing loss diagnosis. Like, and now you're like, just go make your own headbands. And like, this is overwhelming. This is a lot. Like, can't you just make a headband for me? Somebody nice on Facebook that I just met 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Which I had made lots of like cute stuff for our kids, like tutus and hair bows and all this stuff. And every time I did that, my husband's an entrepreneur, so he'd be like, you should sell them on Etsy. I'm like, why would someone buy my hair bows when there's 50,000 other hair bows on Etsy? But I looked, and there was no one selling headbands for BAHA hearing aids on Etsy or Amazon, or there was one lady on like a random website that people knew about, but it was like, wow, this is a very big open market. Like, why is no one doing this? Like, everyone's just making their own headbands. And I'm like, I'm sure I'm not the only one who just had a diagnosis and was like, I don't have the capacity to figure out how to make a headband. Just do it for me and I'll buy one already made. We had a really late, she actually passed her newborn hearing test.
Okay.
But she had a cleft palate. And when she had the cleft palate surgery, supposed to be at like a year old, but the doctor moved someplace else. And then there was like this weird gap that the hospital didn't have. So I got abandoned by the medical system again. Weird gap. We had to wait for the hospital to hire someone and, get caught up on more important surgery. So she was 16 months old when she finally had the cleft palate repair and could finally stop eating baby food and eat real food. I think her record was like 17 jars of baby food in one day.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, because she was 16 months old. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
I would make like 2 squash and then mix like applesauce with squash, and that's what she would eat for like a day. I was cooking a lot of food for her. It was really nice, and I could just hand her a box of crackers. That was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was at her surgery that they looked in her ear and saw she didn't have an eardrum, and they're like, we don't know how she passed her newborn hearing test. So she was 16 months old at that point, which was kind of nice that I didn't have to deal with the cleft palate and the hearing aid and the newborn all at the same time. We like spread it out. Slow learning curve. So since I went from spoon feeding 17 jars of baby food or making a whole squash or multiple sweet potatoes and like cooking massive amounts of mush for the baby. It's like, oh, I have free time now. I can hand her a box of crackers and start a business, I guess. Yeah, so I started, because I bought enough headband supplies to make lots of headbands, and I might as well sell some too while we're at it, now that I know what I'm doing. And I figured it'd just be a fun, like, it was definitely a hobby. And I'm like, if I turn a hobby into a job, it might not be fun anymore. 6 years later, it's still fun, so that's good. But I really didn't think it would be, I just thought it'd be a good learning experience. Like, my husband's an entrepreneur. Now I can, understand his world and his vocabulary and stuff, just trying to start a business and see what happens. I did
So
not realize
now pause there for a second, because we don't want to go over here yet. We want to wait. We want to wait over here.
Okay.
I want you to take us back over here, and I want you to break down a little bit on how does an entrepreneur mind think. This is huge.
That's my husband's question.
No, this is your question, because you're married. Because you're married to him.
Yeah.
Okay. So I want you to break that down to us, because I think it was last week. Sometimes it was either last week, the week before. Was it last week? Anyways, yes, it was. It was last week, because it was after Christmas. Now I don't remember. Anyways, I interviewed this couple, and this woman said to me, I was raised, grow up, get a good education, go to college, and then after college, I just couldn't stay at one job. And my parents were like, what is going on? And it wasn't until I realized I was created to be an entrepreneur that success came.
Goodness.
So can you? Yeah. So break it down. This is important. This is important to people, because if your brain has been created, okay, so we could put a verse in there: for you are God's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to do good things, spectacular, wonderful, amazing things that God prepared in advance for you to do. So, and then you've got, the gift of administration, right? Or you got the gift of serving. Those are real life tangible gifts. You take somebody with the gift of administration, and they're as happy as can be, being behind the scenes, doing all that secretarial land stuff, right?
Yes, they are. Like, I could have just gotten a job as a secretary somewhere. It didn't have to be this complicated.
And yet, you were, I call it catechismic meshing. That's what I call marriage. Catechismic meshing. Okay? Catechismic meshing.
Yeah. I want more purpose and meaning. Like, I would be content. And both of us have been in roles where we're helping other people in their business and, being the administrative assistant and things like that. And like, I think we love seeing people succeed and helping them. And there is purpose and meaning in that too. But it's definitely fun to do my own thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, where's my boss? I need someone to help me, somebody. Yeah, so my husband's mind is very much like, don't just find a solution, like create the solution for others, and don't just sell a product, like be a thought leader and answer questions and things like that. So he really encouraged me, when people asking the same questions over and over in the Facebook groups, like, find an answer, and then don't just answer their question, like write a blog post about it. So then it's, it got to the point that people would actually just share my blog post. I'm like, well, I don't even have to participate in answering the same question over and over. It's like, just here's the blog post. I answered that question. And some things actually like would do a poll, I guess, maybe. Like, okay, when people say like, why does your kid look different or whatever, like, what do you say? And I asked that on Facebook and got a whole bunch of answers, and then put it all together and wrote a blog post with like, here's a whole bunch of different ideas of things, Duane might be like, a shark bit my head off, Like, I was born this way. Or hearing aids help me hear, just like glasses help you see.
Yeah.
So I did that, which I am a writer and more natural. Like making headbands and blogging are all good, quiet, behind the scenes thing. I sit in my office here by myself and do my thing. Lovely. Just somehow end up on podcast interviews. Which again, he's the podcaster. I don't know why this happened.
I love it.
How amazing I am. And like, you should interview my wife. And I'm like, no, just you just talk about me. I don't have to talk about you. It's fine.
But I love it because Becky, you have the wit, you have the humor, and you have you've had to adopt the strength of moving forward. And even although you can look back and say, wait, this is not the way I planned things to go. What are you doing over there? Right?
Yeah.
And yet you've had to propel forward, right?
Yeah.
Well, if I'm going to propel forward, I'm going to make it easier on myself. Like, give the child a box of crackers for goodness sakes, right? It's like
Yeah.
hand the child some Cheerios or whatever, right? And I know you wouldn't have the Cheerios because I know you're very particular with your eating,
It's
which is
gluten free and
yeah.
organic.
And so think, okay, but then let's even think of that. Let's think of the gluten-free industry, right? The
Mhm.
gluten-free industry is not cheaper. It's way more expensive,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Even I remember when you came and stayed with me, and I think I made tacos, and then you
Mhm.
were like, "Oh, I just make it myself," right? So
Yeah.
then when I didn't do that right away. I wasn't there yet, right?
Yeah.
But as time moved forward, I went to purchase some more, and then I realized there was no flavor in this. And I was like, why is there not flavor in this? And then I looked at the back. The number one ingredients was cornmeal. So they had
Yeah.
taken out the flavoring and bulked it up with cornmeal. So then I'm like, wait a minute. Becky made her own taco sauce, taco seasoning. I could make my own. So then when you
Mhm.
make it, you're not just going to make one little container, right? So I
Yeah.
made 5 containers because I make taco meat every week, right? It's a
Yeah.
staple in my house with good
Yeah.
ground
And you
beef,
call it
right?
taco meat. That's what we call it too. It's not ground beef, it's taco meat.
It's taco meat. It's
Yeah.
literally taco. It's a staple in my life.
Yeah.
I thrive off of red meat. My husband likes chicken, right?
Yeah.
Chicken's like, oh, it's kind of I'll have it every now and then, but my body craves red meat, right?
Okay.
And but so it's like if she did it, I could do it, right? So
Yeah.
share with us, okay, before we get to the unveiling of the success over here. Share with us how what you're stretching, right? Everything that you were encountering. Yeah, exactly. That's a play on word. I saw the dual stretching, right? How, and I like to think of like Stretch Armstrong, or how it feels like your skin is going to rip off of you because you're being emotionally, mentally, physically stretched,
My
right?
goodness.
Share with us how that aided other people by you choosing to stay in that space.
You asked some really deep, complex questions. Man.
Yeah, hold on. The questions I send out for the people is to just open their brains. But now that their
Hmm.
brains are open, then the deep ones come in.
Yeah. Like, I don't know how to answer that. Say it again.
Okay. Share with viewers how, because you chose to stay in a very stretching environment, because basically you
Didn't have a
chose, if
choice.
yeah, because you chose, you still chose it. Nonetheless,
Yeah.
you chose it. You didn't say,
Yeah.
could somebody please take this child away? You didn't say
Yeah.
that. You chose to walk out and live in terminology, the cards that were dealt to you,
Hmm.
right? Or the beauty of the uniqueness of the child, the situation you were given. Now share with viewers how what you endured. We could go to Corinthians. Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, Father of compassion, God of all comfort, who comforts us in all of our trials, so that we may comfort those in their trials with the comfort that we ourselves receive, right? Or, as a man sows, so shall he reap, right? How what you endured has now benefited others without sharing the end result of the product.
Okay.
Okay?
Well, I think one thing, I feel like we had an advantage because, like, there are people like Duane's parents who, when Duane was born, it's like, surprise! Like, your kid looks different, and there's not really a whole lot of support or anything. Whereas Ariasha had her dad already. And so I think that really helped us, like, bounce back faster, recover faster from the shock of that, because we're like,
Okay?
okay, we can do this. Like, Duane's done this already. Um, and I also knew, like, Duane is really confident and stuff because of everything he went through. So it is like, how can we, instill that same confidence in our daughter and help other families as well? Um, and I did things like, when I was a child, my older sister was in a wheelchair, and I I started buying children's books that I had when I was a kid, and I realized a lot of these books have a character who's in a wheelchair. And I'm going to guess like 25 years ago, there were not very many children's books that had wheelchairs in them. So we probably owned all 5 of them. And that was probably intentional. Like, I didn't realize it was intentional because it was such a normal part of our life. So I did the same thing where it's like I just started buying children's books that have hearing aids and sign language and things like that just to normalize it for my daughter. And like, if I saw someone, using sign language, it's like, oh, hey, do you want to go, like, trying to learn sign language, things like that. I didn't realize at the time that technically we like belong in the deaf community because apparently my daughter and my husband are deaf. They just don't know sign language because they have hearing aids. And my husband didn't realize until after our daughter was born I guess the platform that he has because of what he went through. Like, he didn't realize that he could use his life experience, Treacher-Collins syndrome, to encourage other people. And that's like an open door to this whole community of people. It wasn't until like our daughter bridged that gap. There's a guy named Jono I forget if he's from Australia or UK. But he's like traveled the world. He has Treacher-Collins syndrome as well. And he's traveled the world and visited families and encouraged them. So family has this baby and there's kind of this shock of like,
Yeah.
you feel alone. And then this adult shows up and is like, hey, like loves their kid, isn't afraid of the kid, isn't afraid of, medical equipment if it's a super severe case of Treacher-Collins syndrome. And just like how he's been able to really encourage people. And Duane's like, oh, like literally just because I have this syndrome, I can encourage other people who have this syndrome. Like, just, it's that simple.
That's right. That's right. And it even makes me think of, I have a niece who has been medically diagnosed with autism, right?
Okay.
But how through her, because they wanted to put her in a special needs class, and she refused to be in a special needs class, right? No,
Mm-hmm.
I will not be in that class because of this, right? And I don't even want to call it. I don't want to call it a disability. I don't want to call it a challenge. Unique. I'm just going to call. I'm going to straight up call it a uniqueness. I'm going to call it
Okay.
uniqueness. A uniqueness. And the reason behind that is how she was uniquely right. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. Okay. The uniqueness in how she was created. Do you know that child graduated with a 4.0?
Wow.
Because she worked so hard, and then of course when she came home she collapsed
Yeah.
and was a very emotional child but she pushed herself, right? Because even though her brain articulated a different way, she was created that way, and she
Mm-hmm.
learned how to navigate how she was created.
Yeah. Well, that's powerful.
Yeah. So share with us. Okay. So here's everything, and now we can move forward in. And then what were the steps that you began to walk out?
Like, as far as starting a business,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, well, a friend who had an Etsy shop encouraged me to start an Etsy shop. So I was like, okay. So I did that. Figured it'd be a good learning experience. Um, I think it took the first year was really slow because I'm like, okay, I've got an Etsy shop. I'm semi involved in Facebook groups, talking and answering questions, but then there's also like you don't want to self promote and it's all complicated. I think what I started noticing, especially the reason that people make their own headbands for their kids, is not just because the ones in the hearing aid company are like $80 and kind of ugly, but it's also like they're scratchy, they don't stay on super well, kids don't like wearing them. But like, hey, if you can make a headband that has, flowers and butterflies and are pretty, or, has fire trucks and dinosaurs, like something that the kid can connect with and like and wants to wear, as well as like soft and comfortable and stays on and all those things. It's like, okay, well, now kids are not just like the headband is no longer just a thing that holds the hearing aid on. It's something, they want to wear their headband because they like their headband. And there are other kids, because I'm like, there are other kids who wear headbands. Like, headbands are a normal thing for
Yeah.
girls, not so much for boys. So why not have headbands that kids love wearing? And then they're like, well, no. And then I think also because Duane really was able to embrace who he is and like own his differences and things like that. There's kind of two paradigms in the hearing aid world where it's like, get something that matches your hair color and hide it, and so nobody notices, which is definitely something that more adults tend to do. With little kids, especially little kids with giant hearing aids, and if the kid doesn't even have hair yet, you're like, it's there, it's pretty obvious. I'd had people ask if it was like a Bluetooth like headphone or something, which is like, yeah, my 2-year-old totally has, which her new hearing aids actually do have Bluetooth. So,
yeah.
Which is great. So, and my husband's hearing aid has Bluetooth. So if he gets a phone call, it goes straight into his hearing aid. Like, no, I do not have like a giant Bluetooth thing on my head. You know, this is a hearing aid. Like, who does that? Maybe.
Yeah, so that's like when it's the intercom, when the mom's in the other room and she's calling the kids for dinner.
That's a thing. I can get a microphone. Like, we could go to the playground and I could have a microphone and talk to her. I don't know how far. I mean, it's like a walkie-talkie. I don't know how far it goes, but you could literally just be like, hey, honey, come back. You're getting too far away. And say it like super soft, and your kid turns around and comes back, and other parents are like, wow, that's amazing. How did she hear you? She's like, she's got really good hearing.
Wow.
Yeah. So I guess with the headbands, it's like we went the route of not, like, my husband's hearing aid matches his hair, and you know, not that he's trying to hide it, but I don't know. I mean, you can't hide the facial differences, things like that.
Yeah.
So with her, it's really like she loves wearing her headbands. It got to the point that our older daughter was jealous and wished that she had a hearing aid. So I started making headbands for her too. That was like one of those moments of like, oh, see, you've become the overlooked sibling. And like I was making headbands for her before I had the other kid who actually needs the headbands. It was like, oh, you don't need a headband. You don't have hearing aids. It's like, oh, but you could still have a headband. And so then trying to include her in the process, you know, because at this point, like, Ariasha still couldn't talk. So I was like, oh, I wish I had, like, you know, there's other people who are like, oh, I've got a 6-year-old kid who would really like this type of headband. And I'm like, oh man, it'd be great if like Ariasha could tell me what she wanted and stuff like that. And it's like, oh, I actually at that point had a 4-year-old who could tell me what they collectively want. So like I could listen to my 4-year-old who's like,
Yeah.
you know, whatever headbands. Like, okay, I should, you know, even now it's like, okay, unicorns, mermaids, like, hey, she's 9. It's like, what's cool these days, kids?
That's right. That's right. Well, let's think of this for a second, okay? Somebody made the decision that let's put llamas in the kid world, right? Disney makes a movie on llama. Then I've got a daughter who her child has pajamas that are llamas, right?
Yeah,
so I've got the next character that I'll share off screen with you. Okay, because
I'm
this
very
is
anti-trend.
yeah. No.
I don't like things that are cool and popular, so I resisted mermaids and unicorns for a long time until I had like new customers request them, and I'm like, right. I need to pay attention to what's cool because that's what people want.
Oh God! But I'm going to give you one that you are going to hold on. Your verbiage is you are going to do not go where the path may lead. Go instead where there is no path and leave a trail. I'm going to give you somebody. Okay, off screen. Okay, so carry on.
I have a designer now, so
okay. This is great.
My husband has a whole team.
Okay,
like, does websites and design, and my illustrator did. Where's my hand? My illustrator did this for us.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, we have a guy who can turn it into all sorts of things. But so I've like started designing my own headbands.
Okay.
Well, I just ask him to, like, hey, can you put a whole bunch of butterflies on a headband? Can you put a whole bunch of fire trucks and firemen, you know, on a little, and then I can get it made. It's really fun. So that's cool.
That is so great.
And I think I love colorful, beautiful things, but I'm not going to wear 50,000 headbands. But I love that I can like see all the elastic and touch it all and make headbands and then mail them to people. Like, I don't need to store up treasures for myself. I don't need all this stuff.
Yeah. That's good. But in businesses, see a problem, find the solution, and implement it. In a nutshell, right?
Yeah.
You got to have, and so like for me, I am displaying people. Right? Yeah. I'm just displaying people. I'm sharing people. I've been called to share people, right? So then you decide to make the headbands. Then what?
And then I started an Etsy shop, and then I think probably mostly because of my blog, actually, and because of Facebook groups, there's 2 different brands of hearing aids. And I noticed one was really popular, and I was like, well, I thought our daughter would just get the same one as Duane because obviously that's the right thing because that's what he has, and therefore it must be the best. So then I was also asking questions in the Facebook group, and we actually chose to get the different brand of hearing aid for her because it seemed more kid-friendly and better warranty and less problem with feedback squeals. Like there's a bajillion reasons that one was better. And so I actually wrote a blog post because this is a popular question that I had, comparing the two. And Duane and I did like a YouTube video talking about it. So we have brand wars where it's like, he's like, well, my hearing aid is better for these reasons. And I'm like, well, I don't even wear a hearing aid, but my opinion as a mom, I think her hearing aid is better. So we were noticed by the hearing aid company, and they actually interviewed me. They couldn't promote my headbands because they're not, FDA approved or whatever.
Oh, goodness sakes.
And they have their own headbands. But still, it's like, oh, wow, I got noticed by the hearing aid company. So that was really exciting. I think I actually got invited to go to a conference, but I wasn't pregnant. But, I had a baby and a business, and it was...
And a baby that was eating crackers now, right? A baby that was eating crackers now?
Yeah. I'm like, I don't want to travel that far to a conference.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
Yeah.
It would have been fun.
Yeah.
Oh, well, think about that. It's a long time ago. Yeah, so that happened. We ended up, I was doing more on Facebook and Instagram. We were noticed by the Born Different TV show, and they asked to interview us in 2020. So a guy came out, and they did a video about our family. It's like about 8 minutes long on the Born Different TV show. And I think that's really, at that point, we're like, we were aware that we were making a positive impact in the world of hearing aids. Now there's lots of kids who have headbands that they love wearing. They feel more confident. They're not trying to hide their differences. They're like, yeah, I've got superheroes on my headband. Like, I'm cool. And even like boys who's, they would like their friend who's also a boy, like, would you like a headband like mine? They're pretty cool. And brothers, who want a matching headband.
That's right.
That's really cool. Yeah.
So it's like it's like 2 for 1. You would be able to do the same for a child that had the hearing aid and the same for the child that did not, so that instead of differences, they had a similarity.
Yeah, we also have toy hearing aids on your dolls.
Wow. Of course.
Yeah.
Of course, come on. My Christmas time we were up in the Renton neighborhood, and my sister, her granddaughters were given a toy, and it is a Barbie doll horse that walks, and he makes the sound of a horse, and until you turn him off, that horse just keeps moving around the house. Even if he falls. It's like, who bought this toy? I'm telling you, it was like a scene out of Miracle. Yeah, it was like a scene out of It's a Wonderful Life. It was like a scene out of Wonderful Life, right? And the horse he's fallen over, and his feet are moving, and he's still making the horse. But why did I share that? Oh, because everybody makes things, right? The horse is for dolls, right? So you made hearing aid for their baby doll, so their baby doll would look like them. Yeah. Come on, that's why you have the American Girl dolls and all these other. Back in the day, it was Baby Alive, and she ate and pooped, and
we had ours first.
Yes,
I think American Girl and Barbie now have hearing aids, but they still do not have BAHA hearing aids. They don't have the right type of hearing aids, because that's the other thing. I bought all these books for my daughter with kids who have hearing aids, but they have like traditional hearing aids or cochlear implants, and so Ariasha would be like, "That's not what my hearing aid looks like. They did it wrong."
That's right. That's right. So there needs to be a new doll created.
Well, there doesn't need to be. They just need to buy my toy hearing aids and put them on their doll.
No. There needs to be a new doll created
with facial differences.
That's right.
That's an interesting point. There are people who like crochet dolls and stuff that'll do like a birthmark, because there's like kids who have a birthmark on their face. Like I've seen that, or even feeding tubes and things like that. But yeah, I don't know how to make a doll with.
You don't have to know how to make it. You just have to have the idea.
I feel like, I don't know. I'm like, take a normal doll and just like punch its cheeks in. Shit. I don't know. Sounds really mean.
No,
Uh,
this is real life. This is forget candid camera, right? This is
I mean, if you
the
were
real.
crocheting, if you took a crocheted doll, it would be a lot easier because it's basically just like dimples. So
Yeah,
it would be easier to make that dip. That was actually something with like this. Where's my
yeah,
friend?
yeah.
Like my daughter in there, talking to our illustrator to do it. I think it's he's got a little V shape right here, to show the indent on both Duane and Ariasha's face. Yeah,
I'm serious, Becky.
gotta
Now I'm
fine tune
stuck.
it a little
Now I'm stuck on this for a second. We've got to play a little more here. Let's get real, because Barbie
bit.
and being shown Barbie
Barbie's
when
really
you're,
tiny.
I know, but watch this. Barbie being showed Barbie when you're little, right? Puts a
Yeah.
false female image inside of young girls when they get
Yeah.
older, right?
I think we all
Because
know Barbie's ridiculously unrealistic,
I
but
know,
anyway.
but this is a first
Yeah.
image, right? This is a first image. So after
Right.
they go from a baby doll, they go to a Barbie doll, right? And
Yeah.
so it puts a false
We know. We
image.
don't have Barbie.
No, I know. I'm just saying it puts a false image. I remember at a
Yeah.
time in my life, there was a particular magazine that was out, and I purposely, for the sake of saving face of the magazine, I came to the conclusion I can no longer have this magazine in my house because when I look at this magazine, I do not feel good about myself. And I made a
Yeah.
conscious decision to not have this particular magazine in my house. Um, and because I didn't want to subject my daughters to this particular magazine
Mm-hmm.
because of the images it portrayed,
Yeah.
and so even down to dolls. Okay, so if you have a doll that maybe the doll doesn't have a foot, but the doll comes with one shoe, or the doll doesn't have a hand, or the doll
Yeah.
doesn't, has a, maybe she
I
has
think
a burn on her
that's
face.
starting to be a thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
And I think that's people like me who have a little bit different skills than I have that can actually, make a doll that has
yeah.
those differences.
Okay, so
But
you
yeah, it's
decide
not necessarily
so you decide to make the headbands, and then you realize not only for the cochlear ear plants, but you need to make ones to go along with the
BAHA.
others. Yeah, the BAHA ear plants, right?
Yeah, I
But
don't. Yeah.
you also have to make. Do you make the other headbands as well? Correct.
No.
Oh,
I only make for BAHA hearing aids. There's a
okay,
bunch of other people on Etsy that make headbands for normal styles of popular hearing
okay,
aids, so I don't need to do that.
okay. So share with our
Just focus
viewers
on my thing.
how it took off, because we're not talking you sold 10
Yeah, so I think the
headbands.
first year I sold like 150.
Okay,
And then the next year I sold like over 1,000.
okay,
So it was a slow, but I think again because of being involved in the Facebook groups and talking, and then people telling their friends on Facebook, it spread and grew to the point that in the last couple of years I haven't even been super involved on social media. Like I've been too busy making headbands to go on social media and answer people's questions and stuff, but I'll go check once in a while and be like, oh look, someone was like, my kid hates their headband, what do I do? And 5 people told him to go to my Etsy shop. So I'm like, I don't even thank you people who love me and promote
yes.
me and do all that for me. It's amazing.
That's right, word of mouth.
Um,
And
yeah.
so the last time you checked, or visited or viewed inventory that has flowed through you, how many headbands have you sold?
I think I told you the number.
You
Where did I tell you
did.
the number?
You did. You wrote it down.
I
Uh,
don't remember. It was
uh,
something I was shocked, but
it
I don't know where I wrote it
was,
down. What did I tell you?
so I want to say it was 12,000.
Sounds, yeah. Which
Yeah,
in
because
6 years,
yeah,
it's
oh,
only,
12,000 headbands and do-it-yourself kits.
yeah.
12,000 headbands and do-it-yourself kits.
Yeah, so
Um,
that's the other thing because it takes me time to make headbands, and I was a crafty, creative person who can make my own headbands, but it was still hard because you have to find the elastic, find the velvet that matches to line the headband to make it thicker and more sturdy. Find the O-ring that holds the connector piece, that holds the hearing aid. Like that's a very complicated, especially the O-ring was really hard. And the person I got it from changed, the supplier changed, and something changed. It took me a little while to find another one that worked. That's very frustrating, and I'm kind of scared. Like if anything changes with this, like don't mess me up, dear supplier person, or supplier, wherever this comes from. I should really figure out how to make that myself. Yeah, so I started putting together do-it-yourself kits for parents who want to just make it themselves, but instead of making them go gather all the pieces, it's like, here's all the pieces you need to make a headband, and make it easier in that way, which also makes my life easier because I just cut it and nail it and I don't have to put it all together. So
Yeah, that's really wise though. That's wise because then that parent, in essence, if they decided, they could make it to where the headband, you could, have the inside construction of the headband, right?
mm-hmm.
But then make it to where the outside was a slip cover
Yeah.
that could so
Yeah.
different ones could slip over one, so you have the body, the like the build
Yeah.
the inside of it, and then make the outside so you could interchange it without
Yeah.
it being scruffy and scratching. Oh gosh, it's even like you could
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of people who've done lots of creative things. It's pretty fun.
yeah, so wow, that's just amazing. So speak, we've got about another two. You get 2 minutes, I get two.
Okay.
Okay, you have 2 minutes. What are you gonna say to viewers?
Goodness, no pressure. Um, um, yeah, I guess I also like the quote, don't ask what the world needs, ask what makes you come alive, because what the world needs is people who are fully alive. And so I think along with like, what are the problems that you see and how can you solve these problems and help other people? But also like, what makes you come alive and how can you use that to help others? I don't know.
That is great. That is so great. So I'm going to recap that the word Sagionic means movement by movement in time. And Becky and her husband Duane, who I'm going to get on set as soon as I can, they created a movement because they needed movement in their world, which in essence created a movement. Hello, 12,000 headbands later, come on. There is
Yeah.
obviously a need. So they moved, which created the movement, which provided a need. And then the word Sagion is carriers of wisdom. So, Becky, I thank you. I thank you for being a carrier of wisdom that potentially you didn't sign up for, and yet you were placed in the midst of it because you fell in love with a man who not only thought outside of the box, but heard outside of the human physical realm.
Interesting. He hears outside of his head. I don't know
That's right.
if your head is a box.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And so that is how you partner. So Becky is a great example of how do you partner with the creative realm. And it didn't come easy because, come on, who wants to feed their kid, 50 jars of baby food, in a 2-day period, right? Even though
Yeah.
you said 16, but I had to elaborate, okay?
Yeah.
That
No,
was called evangelistic.
yeah. No, I mean, 50 jars is like maybe 3 days.
Yes, yes. So I'm just like that was extreme, right? Or
Yeah.
make all your baby food from scratch, right?
Yep.
So you didn't have the that's like, when you started to talk about it, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, that was like her trying to figure out formula." Right? Her trying to create formula and break it down on a molecular level how breast milk was made, and then how do you I mean, I've followed you. I have followed you and prayed over you since I met
Yeah.
you, and just everything that you've had to go through. And I just want to tell you thank you. I want to tell you
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you for choosing to partner with perseverance, with patience. Whether you went kicking or screaming it or not, it doesn't matter. You still chose. You still chose, Becky. And so I bless you. I bless you and Duane. And to all of our viewers, I just want to thank you for coming to another episode of Sagionic 1027. And in the meantime, may the Lord bless you. May the Lord keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon me. Blessings. Bye.